My name is Yusuf Omamani from the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. I am an advocacy and collaboration officer. So my main job is to sensitize Kenyans and also businesses on data protection. So if you have any question, if I'll break, please alert me so that I can be able to explain everything. So I'll just start by saying that data protection is quite a broad topic, but for the interest of time, I'll try and focus on the key areas, especially where the businesses can be able to benefit from this sensitization to identify a person. So this includes the name, the photo, email address, bank details, IP addresses, your mobile device ID number. I believe majority of us know. If you want to know, you just key in some, I don't know, it's star whatever hash, or that number, you get your IMEI number, that becomes personal information. So anywhere you log in these days, you are required to submit your name. I've seen when you're logging into this webinar, you are asked, you give your full name, your email address. So it means that autonomy is collecting or processing my personal information. However, there's also another subset of personal information known as sensitive personal data. So this one, from the term, it is sensitive, and we treat it with utmost sensitivity. This includes our health status, ethnic social origin, your conscious belief, genetic data, biometric data, property details, marital status, and also family details. So these two sets of personal information, we have the general one and the sensitive one, are still personal data. However, whenever you're processing such information, you have to take into account, especially when dealing with sensitive information, you have to be very careful. So hope you've all understood and seen what we mean when we say personal data. It's any information that can be used to identify a natural person. We have three key terms in data protection. We said a data subject, which have defined it's the citizens, me and you, a natural person. We also have data controller, data processor. Now these ones are institutions or businesses. So who is a data controller? So a data controller is a natural legal person, public authority agency, or any other body which alone or jointly with others determines the purpose and means of processing of information or personal data. Who's a data processor? Again, a natural or legal person, public authority agency, or any other body which processes personal data on behalf of the data controller. And they have to have a contractual relationship and is dependent on the controller on the means and manner in which the data shall be processed. A data processor has to have a contractual relationship with the data controller. And for you not to confuse when you say a data processor, you see, processing of personal data means collecting of information, storing of information, and also sharing. So when I was logging into this webinar, I was asked to give my personal information. So by me signing up, it means Centonomy has processed my personal information. Till the day delete all my information from the database, all the time they'll be storing it, it means they'll be processing my personal information. So I guess I can ask audience, from the business that you operate, are you a data controller? Are you a data processor? Or are you both? And by processing data, it does not automatically mean you're a data processor. Even data controllers process, just that they determine the means of processing of personal information, and the data processor processes on behalf. In other terms, people say that the data processor is a third party. Let me give an example so that we are beyond on the same page. Let's assume I have a shop which transacts money. For example, the agents, the bank agents, or the mobile telco agents. So what do they do here? So majority of the time, they process personal information on behalf of either the bank or the telco. So majority of the time, they are data processors in this case. Let's take a bank, for example, like I see KCB Biashara. So let's use KCB as an example. So in this case, KCB is usually a data controller because they determine the purpose and means of processing of personal data. However, they do hire or bring up on board third parties like agents who process information on their behalf, because sometimes they want to bring in people who can connect all over the country. So, for example, if you go to Turkana, I'm sure you get agents there. If you go to Siaya, you get agents there. So they are doing or processing information on behalf of the bank, which is situated in especially the big cities or the big towns. So up to there, is there any question? I see someone say, I collect phone numbers because we need to call the customer once the product is ready to come collect. It means at times we take pictures of customers in our outfits. We usually ask if we can post on their online pages. If they're not comfortable with the idea, then we do not post their images. Okay, that's correct. So for those who are collecting pictures or taking pictures of customers, I assume you're either a restaurant or a nightclub, because we've seen such cases of where we have fined nightclub because of using customers' pictures. So whenever you're processing such information, and I will talk in the lawful basis, we'll see when you can collect this information and when not to use this information. So for every business that is here, so you have to determine whether you're a data controller or whether you're a data processor. So for those who are data processors, you'll find yourself that you'll have to have a contractual relationship with a data controller. You can't be a data processor on your own. You can't just be a data processor. You have to have a contractual relationship with a data controller. So moving forward, we'll see the symbiotic relationship between a data controller and a data processor. But majority of the time, you can either be one, or if you're a data processor, you might have performing the same functions on which they collect this information. The next principle is on data minimization. So this one we highly emphasize. You see, there's some people who collect a lot of information, and majority of this information they actually don't need. So in this country, what are the most important information which I see a lot of businesses collecting? This includes any form of identification, be it your ID or passport, maybe a photo and an email address. Sometimes I see there's some places I go to, I'm being asked to issue a lot of information, which I see is not necessary for that institution to run. So it's important to minimize the amount of information that you're collecting. So the next principle is on accuracy and accountability. So whenever you're processing information, ensure that you're collecting accurate information and be accountable to the data subject. The next principle is on storage limitation. So whenever the purpose of processing has been achieved, do you still keep the information? Is it important for you to keep the information? If it is important, you have to state, why are you keeping this information? If it's no longer viable to have it, it's also important to destroy the information. If you're keeping it, it's important also to notify the data subject that after the process of processing has been achieved, we intend to keep this information for X amount of time, be it 7 years, be it 10 years, be it 2 days. So it's important to notify the data subject and they have a right to know. And the last principle is on integrity and confidentiality. So you have to treat this information with integrity and confidentiality. Let me use an example. I'm sure a majority of us use social media. Let's assume the direct messages that usually have with other users. If you find that your information has been leaked, the things that you're saying on the DM has been leaked to the public, how does it feel? So the same way, all information that you collect, you have to treat it between an institution and a data subject, or between two institutions. Then it means that they have a lawful basis. An example I can give is, let's for example, the boutique that we were talking about, someone who has a boutique and they decide to bring in a model to be used to market the boutique. So there's usually a contract between the boutique and the model. So the performance of the contract there will state that I'll be using your image for us to market our business. So in that case, there's a performance of a contract, and that will be the lawful basis upon which I'll be using this person's image or the model's image to market. Again, if you're an employer and employee, so as an employer, you need the personal information of the employee. So in that case, there'll be a performance of a contract between the employer and the employee. That will be the lawful basis. Another lawful basis is a legal obligation. So if there's a legal obligation for processing of personal information, then it becomes a lawful basis. So what are examples of this legal obligation? As an employer, if you have employees, so there's a legal obligation for you to deduct, for example, this pay as you earn, which you remit to the taxman. There are other statutory deductions because they're legal obligation, and you have to provide information. For example, you have to provide your KRA PIN if you want to get employed, or maybe transact any business within the jurisdiction of Kenya. Now, you have a legal obligation for you to submit this information. What other legal lawful basis? We have vital interest of the data subject. So there are instances where you can rely on vital interest of the data subject where you cannot get consent. Let me give a good example. I'm sure you've seen on social media where maybe there's someone missing and then you post their photo saying that this is a missing person. If you have any information relating to this person, please. So I'll jump straight to obligations. What are the obligations we have as businesses in regards to the Data Protection Act? So the first obligation is on registration. So if you are a data controller, a data processor, or both, you have an obligation to register with the Data Protection Commissioner. And after 2 years, you renew your registration. We'll talk about the fees because there are some fees that are required. This data protection by design or default. So it is important for us to implement data protection principles in an effective manner and also integrate necessary safeguards for the purpose into processing. For those who have less than 5 million and less than 10 employees, you're exempted. However, for those who operate small businesses, however, have a maximum of 5 million and between 1 and 50 employees. So if you have, for example, 20 million and 1 employee, so we have consequences for non-compliance. So failure to comply with the standard and principles in the processing of personal data that results in either the loss or disclosure will have significant legal and financial implications. Let's start from step 1. So you're operating a business. Client is satisfied in how you've handled their personal information. So this client will file a complaint with us. So once they file the complaint, we'll do an investigation and we have to resolve. Remember, we have to resolve it within 90 days.